All right, so this is the Chapter 8 review for Workplace and Apprenticeship Math 30. We're going to go over simple interest, compound interest. There's not much to say about simple interest. You guys mostly work with compound. Did you do any questions with simple? So I think what I did when I explained this in an earlier lesson was I just compared what simple interest versus compound interest was to help you explain what compound interest was. So yeah, one of the first things you learn here is about compound interest. There's a big nasty formula right here. Hey, that looks pretty ugly. It's not that bad. I'll go over that in detail in a minute. But the big difference between compound interest and simple interest is that simple interest is really a percentage of the original amount only. And let's say you have $1,000 and it's 10%. Okay, so that's $100. So if you were getting charged 10% simple interest on the $1,000, and if it was every year, you'd get $100 extra charge every year. And that $100 wouldn't change. That's simple interest. It's always a percentage of the principal. Well, this compound interest now, as you've already studied, this is just a review, but compound interest is a percentage of the current amount owing. So for example, if we have $1,000 and you owe 10% compound interest compounded every year, after the first year, you will owe 10% more, 10% of the principal that you have owing at the time, which is $1,000. So that means now you owe $1,100, right? Did I say 1,000? 1,100. The next year, that 10% is not on the original like simple interest, but now it's on what you currently owe. So it's 10% of 1,100. So now the second year you owe $110 extra. You see? And that gets added. And each year it builds. So the amount owing grows kind of exponentially, like it grows quite fast over time, as opposed to simple interest, which is just kind of a linear graph. You owe the same amount every year, another $100 every year, 100, 100, 100. Well, now it's 100 and then 110 and then 100 and whatever, keeps going. So you owe a little bit more each year. That's compound interest. So let's go over this again, this formula. This is the simple interest. Whoops, whoa, what's going on? This is simple, which you don't really have much to do with simple interest in this chapter, I guess. But this is simple interest, okay? This is compound here. This is compound. So the A is your future value, or the amount of money that you have to repay, okay? Or the amount of total money involved at the end. P is the principal. So the principal is the initial amount that you borrowed, the initial amount. R is the annual interest rate as a decimal. That's really important. So here's R. So again, in my example, it was 10% interest. So that would be, this is the decimal for 10% interest. You always divide by 100 to get the decimal form, okay? Because percent is out of 100. So 10 out of 100 is 0.10. Now, N is the number of compounding periods per year. So if it's compounded yearly or annually is the term that you'll see, annum or annually, that comes from the Latin word annum. That's once per year, okay? Annually, once per year. If it's monthly, compounded interest, compounded monthly, then it's 12 times per year, so N would be 12. If it's compounded quarterly, a quarter is a fourth, so that's 4 times per year. So that's what N is. And T is the term of the loan in years. So that's the total amount of time. The term is the total amount of time that this loan kind of covers before it's all paid back or whatever. So that's where this little exponent comes from. It's the number of times per year, number of compounding periods per year, times the number of years. That gives you the total compounding periods. Okay? So if you understand that formula, it should be pretty easy to just, plug the numbers in. We will probably, let's see, well, I don't know if you guys need me to do an example. I mean, if you plug this in your calculator, just make sure you remember to use brackets, and you should use brackets here as well, guys. So use a second set of brackets here if you do this in your calculator. That's the one thing I would suggest. So use multiple sets of brackets just so you make sure that your calculator knows that these are kind of stuck together there, okay? So anyways, you've had practice with that, so I won't do a question exactly like that, but I'll just outline that formula again. Okay, so another thing that I pulled from the chapter here is small business opportunities. So we talked about the costs of a business, but we also talked about the reasonability or the profitability or the viability of a business. So you may be asked some questions, is this a good business to have? Like, if you're selling snowshoes in Florida, you might not want to spend too much money starting that business up, unless it's vintage snowshoes to Canadians that travel down to Florida. Maybe you might have something there, but I'm not really sure how many even just northern Canadians want to buy snowshoes from someone in Florida. But anyways, that's a good, well, they could be cheap there, yeah, or it could be really expensive because there's just no snowshoes in Florida to be had. But anyways, so the viability of the business and that kind of thing, it's those are things that you want to consider as well. Okay, so just a little note here: opening a daycare for children with special needs will require special toys, special equipment, and people with probably special training. So there's going to be lots involved in a business like that. Could be very rewarding and profitable for a business owner, but you want to go in considering all factors. And I guess that's what I'm trying to help you realize, that when you do a chapter like this, there's a lot of little things that you should think about that you maybe normally wouldn't think about. Little factors that would come into play. Okay, startup costs and operating costs. Two important things to know. A startup cost is a cost that occurs at the very beginning, like buying equipment, getting a license to do business, that sort of thing, buying a vehicle. If you're going to do lawn care or something, you need to buy a lawnmower, maybe some chemicals, maybe some other tools. So these are the things that you need at the very beginning to start doing your business. The operating expenses would be sort of those things that are ongoing costs, okay? Fuel for that lawnmower, right? Or annual fees to keep your license up, your business license or whatever. So the regular occurring ongoing costs. So the things that they may say here: cost of space, okay? You need to rent a space to do your business perhaps. Equipment, maybe you're renting equipment or supplies or doing other regular things. So here's an example of things that you might consider. So startup costs. Is this a startup cost or is this an ongoing? So a ladder. Okay, well, depending on what you're doing, you might need a ladder before you start working. That's probably a startup cost, isn't it? Other tools. That's a little vague, but if it's, if you're doing some kind of construction job, you may need the tools before you start. You're not going to show up to a job and say, yeah, I'm going to do this job first without any tools and save up some money and maybe I'll buy some tools later. I'm just going to cut this wood with my hand. No, you're not, unless you're like a karate guy or something. But you're not going to you feel me? Okay? All right? Okay. Advertising signs. Advertising signs. That's interesting. Do you need advertising signs at the beginning? Is this sort of something that you would consider maybe an ongoing expense? You're going to keep advertising every month or every year.
Well, if you do your own advertising stuff, it's a one-time thing.
Okay, if you buy your own signs, it might be a startup cost. If you're buying advertising space on a sign, that would be an operating cost. Okay, $50, that's probably renting a bus seat or something, right? Like a bench, here's my business, whatever. Okay, truck, okay, probably startup cost, right? Signage for the truck, again, you could probably argue both ways, but good arguments for probably startup costs for this stuff. The signage is not going to be a regular every month thing, probably. That's going to be a one-time, so. Phone bill, there we go. That's operating, because that's happening monthly. Vehicle insurance, monthly. That's operating. Gasoline, operating. Vehicle maintenance, that's operating costs, okay? So it kind of the first half here looked like startup costs, maybe in the second half roughly is operating. But do you guys understand the difference there between operating and startup costs? Okay, important to know. So that was 8.1. 8.2, we talk about, again, some more terms, operating a small business. What is revenue? Okay, revenue is the amount that you take in or the amount that you earn through your business. So people pay you, that's revenue, okay? They pay you, it's revenue. Fixed expenses and variable expenses. Fixed is something that is steady, it is secure, it's solid, it doesn't change, fixed. So if you have an expense that is the same every month, or something you can rely on every month, something like insurance costs or a flat rate telephone bill right there, see that? That's a fixed expense. Car insurance, probably a fixed expense. Groceries, you might not eat the exact same amount every month, so that's probably going to change. That's a variable, okay? Gas for your car, again, variable, is groceries on there twice? Interesting. Okay, they went for groceries more than once in a month. That makes sense. Variable, though, would change, right? Variable expense, as I mentioned. So even employee salaries, somebody may work extra hours, or somebody may be maybe taking holidays or something. So each month, that will probably change just a little bit. Okay? Any questions about any of this? Okay. Notice on the left side, revenue, that's all the money that this person takes in for their business. A payment from so-and-so, a check from so-and-so, a tip from so-and-so. And then expenses are the money that's going out. Okay? Revenue is coming into you. Expenses are going out. It's expensive. I got to pay for that. That's expensive, right? That's what you think of. And again, there's other questions and things that you can look up in other videos, but I'm just doing a review here. So 8.3, I think this is our last section. Buy or lease a vehicle for your business, okay? So obviously vehicles are big things. Not a lot of people have the 15, 20, whatever, $1,000 it takes to maybe buy a big truck for a construction business or to haul doors or windows or whatever. So, a lot of times you're gonna have to either buy or lease. And if you're operating a business, those kind of costs can be a write-off. They can help you when it comes tax time. The more expenses you have related to your business, the less tax you're going to have to pay in a lot of cases. So some people, instead of just buying a truck and wearing it down, maybe they rent or they lease or they have some sort of, it's a bit of a write-off if they don't pay for it all at once. So this is a very real situation where a lot of people, in businesses, they rent or they lease or they're making some kind of payments anyways. So leasing is a lot like renting, except the lease has a specific amount of time that you are going to rent the vehicle for. So that's why it's called a lease. If you rent an apartment, it's maybe month by month, or maybe you only need to give 30 days notice and you're out of there. If you rent an apartment. If you lease an apartment, that means you sign for 2 years or 3 years or whatever. And there's big penalties if you decide you're just going to skip town, right? That's a difference. So it gives you, usually, leases are a little bit more secure for you. The landlord's not going to say, okay, you're out of here. Oh, and it's better for them because they know that you're going to most likely fulfill your lease term because there'll be some extra payments if you didn't. So that's what leasing is. It's like renting for a specific amount of time. And leasing a vehicle is very, very popular because you get a newer vehicle. It's kind of like renting, but it's not renting an old vehicle. It's renting a newer vehicle usually. You have warranty. You get to drive a nice vehicle. And then at the end of the term, you can just give it back. You can just say, I'm done with it. You take it now. And you aren't saddled with an older vehicle. You can get a newer one, or you can now decide to buy or whatever. So they can be a little bit more than making payments, but that's what a lease is. Okay, what are some other things here? A down payment. Okay, if you're going to buy something and you want to make a down payment, that's always a good idea to make a down payment. So if you can save up at least some cash towards buying a vehicle or buying something big, good idea to do that. So let's say we have a vehicle for $15,000 and you saved $2,000, and you're like, well, I could buy a $2,000 vehicle, but I need something better than that. So I'm going to buy a $15,000 vehicle, but I'm going to put a down payment of $2,000 on that vehicle. What that means is that $2,000 comes off of the total that you have to borrow. So that means you're going to pay tax on, or pay interest fees on less money. So it's going to cost you less in the long run. So a down payment would get subtracted from the total at the very beginning, and then you would calculate your interest that you owe on the remaining balance. So that's what a down payment is. And do that for a house. If you're buying a house, they require you to make a down payment. Usually 5% or more is the minimum. A lease term is the length of time that you're going to rent, lease a vehicle or whatever. The lease rate is the amount of your monthly payments. So whatever you pay per month, that's your lease rate. Security deposit, it's, you guys know about security deposits. You pay something at the beginning, and then if you return it in good shape, you get your deposit back. If you return it and it's all scuffed up and broken or dented or whatever, then they'll say, you know what, sorry, you don't get your deposit back because you wrecked the car, and we need that to fix it. That kind of thing. A kilometer allowance is also another thing here that's different with lease vehicles. If it's your own vehicle, no one cares how many miles you put on it or kilometers. But if it's a lease vehicle, then they're gonna want some assurance that they're gonna get that vehicle back, and you haven't put 200,000 or 300,000 kilometers on it in 2 years, like just drove it across the continent or something, because they're expecting to get a decent used vehicle back in 2 or 3 years after the lease term, and that company is expecting that they can sell that again, or that they can rent it out or lease it again or whatever. So there's usually a kilometer allowance. If you go over that kilometer allowance, you owe them money, and it's usually money per kilometer, 10, 15 cents a kilometer, somewhere in there. Yeah, which I mean, you know, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 kilometers, you could owe, you know, $1,000, right? Extra or something, or 1,500. The residual value is basically the dollar amount that the car is worth when the lease term is done. So what can they sell it for? What is the value that you can actually buy it out too? So if you lease a vehicle, you're like, I love this vehicle, I don't want to give it back. No problem. You just pay the residual value, then it's yours. But usually it's like, you know, you've already paid $10,000, $15,000 worth on this car, and then the buyout, the residual, is still another $15,000. So it's, you know what I mean? It ends up usually costing you quite a bit more than if you would have just bought it, but usually there's an option there. Okay. Oh, I skipped delivery charge. That is simply what it says. If a new vehicle is made in, let's say Detroit or something, and they got to ship it over to you, there's a delivery charge. It's to carry your vehicle to this where you live. That's what it is. So that's a one-time. What's that?
It's like shipping costs for vehicles.
It's like shipping costs for vehicles, right? If you order a vehicle from Amazon, you'd have a lot of shipping costs, right? There you go. Okay. All right. So this is the last thing I want to do here. I just want to give you, just show you this question and then the solutions underneath. We're not going to take the time to go through it, but I am going to outline sort of what was done here. So, Gij Wan, I think I said that name right, needs a car for her home business. She's chosen a model that costs $22,095.21, including all taxes and fees and stuff. She has two options. She can lease the car. 4 years, $356 a month with a security deposit of $500, delivery charge of $450. That's one option to lease. Second option would be to make a down payment and then take out a loan and basically buy the rest of buy the car. Okay? So to calculate the costs there, for the first part, you would take your monthly payment, right, times 4 years times 12 months a year. So down here, you see the payment times 4 times 12. And then the security deposit would not be something you would consider necessarily, because you're going to pay that and then you're going to probably return it in decent condition. So you're going to get that money back. So it's like it's a net lot, zero, right? You pay the $500, then at the end you get it back. So we won't include that $500, but the delivery charge is certainly something you have to pay at the beginning. Okay, so your shipping fees there. Okay, $450. So here's the cost for that leasing option, and it's about $17,500. Okay, so that's to lease. So notice that $17,000, it's worth $22,000. And then at the end of that, once $17,000 is paid, she just gives the car back. Okay, so that's a lot of money just to kind of like borrow the car, right? But it's a new car, it's under warranty, it's pretty safe. You know, you're driving something really nice. What about B? What about if she buys it? Remember, the down payment comes off the total at the very beginning. So there's the original total. That down payment is going to come right off the top. Now that's great because we're going to pay less interest now. Okay. You use this formula. I'll zoom in just a little bit there so we can kind of see. So we're going to take this amount, 21, put that as our principal. It's 3.95%, so the decimal form of that goes there. All right, that's the R. It's compounded, I think it said quarterly, compounded quarterly. So that's why the 4 is here. And then we have compounded quarterly for, and it says 4 years. So that's why we have a 4 here. Okay, so there's an example of how this compound interest formula works. Now, you might want to do this on your calculator first, like they did right here. Then take it to the power of 16. You have to remember your order of operations. Okay? Bed mass, remember that? Flash from the past. Do your brackets first. So do this inside the brackets first. Then E is exponents. So then do this exponent thing first. And then D and M are multiplication and division. So then finally, whatever this is, multiply it by this at the end. Now your calculator should be able to do those order of operations on their own. The calculator should be smart enough to do that, but just to be certain, you might want to break it up into little pieces like they did here. So obviously this is the amount of the $21,000 plus the interest, and then you add the $1,000 that she paid, and here's the total right here, $25,000. So the total cost of purchasing the car was $25,000. So you lease it for 4 years and you pay $17,000, or you buy it and in 4 years you've paid $25,000. The difference is here you own a car at the end of this one, right? You actually own the vehicle. The only downside is now you have a 4-year-old vehicle, which the value is down quite a bit now. So if you want to turn around and sell it, you wouldn't make this back at all. You wouldn't get anywhere close. You'd sue. But you actually have something at the end. So that's how those work. That's how the calculations of leasing right here and purchasing with a down payment and our great formula right here, the compound interest formula. Okay? So there's a comprehensive review of Chapter 8. If you have any questions, please ask me now. But I am going to just kind of like scroll back through this so you can see the last few things that we did here. Some of the examples, some of the terms. Okay, Chapter 8, Workplace and Apprenticeship 30. Any questions from you guys? No? All right. I will remind you, if you ever get stuck, please go to, what is this? MrMathWell.com. It's a website I just found. It's really good. And you can see this Chapter 8 video will be sliding right in here very shortly. I'm going to stop recording this pretty soon, and it's going to be right in here. And of course, here's a video for the final exam, should you be having one here in your semester or whatever system you have here. Here's your final review of the entire course as well. So go to MrMathWell.com and go to the courses page and go to your Workplace Apprenticeship Math 30. Have a great day.
Like, subscribe,
Share this video.
ring the bell.
Ring the bell.
Make sure to like it.
Go to MrMathWell.com.
Yeah, do that. That'd be great.